Next speaker is Stuart from Indiana University. Francis Lieber's Americanisms as an early source on Southern speech. And there's a handout here as well. And I think most of you know Stuart.
Americanisms, perhaps about 10% of them may be Southernisms or of interest to the history of Southern English. These include entries on slang terms, terms for designating people, comments on grammar, and known Southernisms. And by known Southernisms, I mean Southernisms that are indicated in current sources such as Dare or in Carver's 87-word geography. Lieber's entries sometimes provide early or the earliest reference to known Southernisms. In that way, Lieber's Americanisms can be considered as a valuable source for the history of Southern English. Before presenting some of Lieber's entries pertinent to the American South, I want to give some background on Francis Lieber. Lieber was one of the most publicly well-known academics in the 30-year period before the Civil War, but he's almost completely unknown today. Lieber was born in Germany in 1798. He obtained a PhD in mathematics at the University of Vienna in Germany in 1820. He was close with Wilhelm von Humboldt and familiar with his linguistic writings, and they maintained a correspondence in the 1820s and 1830s. Lieber's biographer, Friedel, in 1947, refers to von Humboldt as Lieber's mentor. Lieber immigrated to America in 1827 and conceived of the Encyclopedia Americana. He was the first editor of the encyclopedia, and the first edition came out in 13 volumes between 1828 and 1832. After obtaining a professor position at South Carolina College in 1835, Lieber became quite well known as an early political scientist and legal scholar. This is reflected by the books that he'd authored that I list in two on the handout. Now, during the same period, the 1830s and 1840s, Lieber maintained an active interest in language and linguistics. These are reflected by his language-related publications in number 3 in the handout, which I won't have time to go over. Some of the pertinent sources on Lieber are given in 4. There's a general biography of Lieber by Friedel, 1947, that only touches on Lieber's language-related interests. His importance to linguistics can be found in a short section on Lieber in Andressen, 1990. The one linguist who has actually looked at Lieber's unpublished papers in the Huntington, other than myself, was Shirley Bryce Heath. This is discussed in her 1982 paper cited, but she doesn't really give a lot of specific examples of some of the things Lieber wrote in his unpublished work. I've been trying to make known in some of my recent work, Davis 2003, and to appear on 4F and G on a handout of some of Lieber's comments related to African American English, and I will not be talking about that today. And in 5 and 6, I have the characterization of his linguistic interest as reflected especially in his unpublished work. So in 5, we see that he wrote on and was very interested in American Indian languages, German and German language in America, Creole languages, American versus British English, and he would intensely follow the language development of Laura Bridgman, who was the first blind deaf child to be taught language successfully in the late 1830s and 1840s. These interests are really not opportunistic, but have a common theme, and which he himself recognizes in 6. And this connects, common theme is observing language development and change in progress. Okay, then let's get to the topic at hand, which is his manuscript on Americanisms and Anglicisms, which he compiled, as I mentioned, between 1849 and 1851. Now, it's quite possible that Lieber began compiling this manuscript in response to John Bartlett's Dictionary of Americanisms, which was first published in 1848. Lieber occasionally references Bartlett, usually to say that Bartlett does not include such a term or does not have it right. Okay, so the purpose then of the present paper is to bring together the entries from Lieber's Americanisms that in some way relate to Southern English. As I mentioned, maybe about 10% of the over 800 entries are of interest for the history of Southern English. Among Lieber's entries that I've compiled here, I've included entries for slang terms, terms for people, comments on grammar, and other Southernisms. Some of these Southernisms are known, and some are completely obscure or perhaps lost. As an example, he notes some local college slang, and I would think that these terms are lost. So in 9 through 12, I have his entries for terms that were used by students at South Carolina College, recorded by Lieber in the 1840s. So I'll just go through a couple of these. Bugs about. Bugs about, this is a 9. Bugs about is the call of our students when there is disorder and the professors come out. The bugs are, of course, the professors, and probably is connected with big bugs for great important people like bigwigs. I dare say the call bugs about is general in colleges and perhaps Old English. No bugs but gentlemen and friends, cried Preston, president of the college, once pretty angrily. No bugs, come here and let us talk, and students readily came. In 11, on the next page, Chalcaustic. By going through these words, you'll get a sense of the kinds of things that Lieber was interested in and noted and found interesting enough to write about. Chalcaustic, a word among our students, probably invented here, possibly imported into our college from a western region. To chaw a person is to say sarcastical things to or of him, and this slang word is formed as so many others, for example, judgmatical, that is, of a common word, sometimes a cant word, with an addition which gives it a ludicrously pompous or scientific sound. If the word has been made here, and only lately too, as I'm told it has, it only shows how such words originate. It may very easily spread to the West, for it chimes in with the ready disposition of those people to make and use cant words of the sort. Or the example in 12, rat fresh. Freshmen in our institution are called rat fresh if they have entered college when the freshman class was already formed, to distinguish them from the freshmen who enter the class in October and remain in it but a month and a half, the class then rising to sophomores. This term, though universal now, has come into use only these last 6 or 8 years, yet I've never been able to ascertain its origin. No one knows it. Okay, in 13 to 21, I have some what I might call slang terms that Lieber noted, and he always often wants to look at origins of words. So a good example, well, in 16 he has one of the earlier references, not the earliest, to the term bodacious or bodacious. So he says, in the upper part of South Carolina, bodacious or bodacious is used by the vulgar people for entire whole root and branch. For instance, the pig broke into my fence and destroyed the potato patch bodaciously. But in terms of, he often is asking about where do these words come from. So in 17, judgmatical. One of those odd words common in the West and even here, the South where I live, as in bodacious or bodacious, the reminiscences of acious and audacious and voracious help to generate the word. And then he notes a little later down here, I was surprised to find the word as used by the English sailors in the reports of Sir James Clark Ross to the Admiralty after his return from the polar search for Sir John Franklin. And then he cites the London Spectator where the word is mentioned. And Lieber was very well read. He was reading the British newspapers and papers from the North, and he often will cite these sources in showing where the word was used.